Thanks to Loire Valley wines, we're here again. And Loire Valley is known as the Garden of France because the soils are so fertile. You can grow just about anything, including gorgeous flowers and grapes. And it's also considered the cradle of the French language. Joan of Arc hung out there for a bit. Rabelais was there and created all kinds of beautiful works of art. So it's a really historic and legendary region, the third largest producer of wine in all of France in addition. The first is the Languedoc, and the second is the Rhone Valley. But it's a really special place, and I hope that maybe all of us will get to visit there together at some point. So if you did purchase the two wines from the Loire Valley, from our great partner, Small Shop, we all want to support as many small, family-owned, independent wine shops as possible right now because, you know, small business is really in jeopardy during these times. So we're supporting tonight Urban Uncorked, which is a great shop, and we have all the links to Urban Uncorked if you want to visit them if you're in New York or in their area and can purchase wines from them. So thank you to Urban Uncorked for being a part of this evening. So I do have something in my glass, as most others do. It's the right thing to do, I'll tell you. Cheers to having a glass with new friends and old friends in a really great safe space. We're also going to be doing this for the next 6 weeks at the same time every week with 2 different wines and a different recipe. So if you want to download the recipe and cook along, we're going to be doing a lot of sort of riffs on what they would classically have with these Loire Valley wines. So I also want to talk for a minute, and I think my bacon is okay back there, about geography. If anybody grew up in France, I don't know, Julia, if you did, you can confirm this, but I was told that most French children learn in school that their hand is France, right? Well, looks like France. And the way that I learned sort of the geography of France and where the various wine regions are by the different parts of my hand. So I might be mirrored here, so this might be backwards, so you'll just have to imagine me flipped. But you know, Champagne is up here, Burgundy's in here, Bordeaux's a little further down, and we're talking about the Loire Valley, which is a long stretch of land which goes from the Atlantic Ocean and then down and follows the Loire Valley to about the center or past a bit of France. And it's a really interesting place because unlike other regions where they might specialize in one white wine grape and one red wine grape, there's a ton of diversity in the Loire Valley as you go from one side of the Loire to the other because you have slight differences in climate and also differences in soil. So tonight we're focusing on a wine, the Muscadet, which is made from a grape called Melon de Bourgogne. And then the actual name of the grape, which in this case is one of those place names, right, is Muscadet, Sèvre, Maine. And so, you know, you always pronounce the N or the ending consonant if there's an E at the end. So Muscadet for short, that's a little easier for us Americans to handle and say without fumbling. So if you go to the Parisian bistro and say, you know, a glass of Muscadet, they'll definitely know what you're talking about. And this Melon de Bourgogne grape is really interesting because it didn't actually originate in the Loire Valley. And again, we're talking at this side of the Loire Valley, so all the way towards the Atlantic, where you have cool breezes and definitely an oceanic sort of terroir, right? So if you want to stump a sommelier, you can ask them all kinds of terroir questions. They really love that. When you have this in the glass, this is an interesting example of Muscadet Sèvre Maine, made from the Melon de Bourgogne grape. It actually is a style of wine where they spend some extra time aging the wine on the lees. The lees is a nice word for the yeast cells, right? So you have the yeast cells that are in that mix fermenting and turning all the sugar from the grapes or the fruit, whatever you're making, into alcohol and CO2, and then they die, right? Because they get asphyxiated or it gets a little too cool for them to continue, or the alcohol level gets so high that they die. But we don't want to get rid of the dead yeast cells, the lees. We like to keep them in contact with the wine for a little bit because they can add all kinds of aromas and flavors. So if anyone has their glass of wine handy and wants to put their nose in for a second, in this particular Muscadet, you have a little bit of lees contact aromas. So if you smell sort of brown spices or kind of brioche, toasty aromas, those are what we called lees contact aromas. Mark and Dustin, what do you guys get on the nose of this wine? Did I mention that if I wasn't paying attention, I would totally burn the bacon?
Right now, all we smell is bacon. So
Good.
for those that are not familiar with Muscadet, like what would you equate this to as far as like a more commonly known grape varietal?
That's a great question. So generally, people who like bright, refreshing styles of white wine. So I'm talking about kind of lighter styles of Chenin Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is a great style that's a little lighter and brighter, or a dry style of Riesling is also a nice kind of parallel style. So if those are things that you enjoy, then you would love, I think, a Muscadet. The other interesting thing is we love to talk about terroir, specifically when we're talking about French wines. And, you know, there are a lot of people who believe that sort of the minerality of the soil or the composition of the soil affects what we get in the end glass of wine. And so these are grapes that are planted in vineyards that, you know, get actual ocean breeze and maybe a little bit of like salt from the soils. And so this is considered to be a great aperitif wine as we're enjoying it right now. I'm going to enjoy a little more of it right now. And classically, it would be enjoyed with oysters, like those famous Bellin oysters, Breton sort of shellfish and seafood. So good with all that kind of stuff. So there's almost like, as there is in Chablis, sort of a sea salty kind of minerality on the nose and also on the palate. So our family for the holidays always does an oyster stew, which I think is going to be fantastic, like fried oysters, all those kinds of things that we love when we're celebrating. I think will be a really nice match with this Muscadet Sèvre from the Melon de Bourgogne grape. So then I'm going to get started on the cooking part. So we decided to do, as I said, eggs in red wine. And we're doing kind of a variation on how you might poach an egg in red wine. We're just going to poach the egg in water because I'm not going to lie, as some of these friends who are here know, I've always been a little afraid of egg poaching. I don't know. I just think it's a really scary thing. So I'm going to get my water simmering for the egg portion. And I have all of this great runoff from the bacon. Bacon fat, is everybody comfortable with that? I mean, that's like, Maria's nodding at me, thank you. So the next thing that we're going to add to this recipe to make our sauce is some mushrooms. So I have some shiitake and also button mushrooms. So I'm going to get those all chopped up. And then I also have some shallots. The traditional recipe has pearl onions, but I don't know about you guys, but Instacart has been a little challenging lately, and it's real fun when you open your Instacart delivery to see what you got. And I definitely didn't get pearl onions, so that's okay. We're going to use the shallots that I happen to have in the house. And I think this is one of those recipes where you can pretty much use anything that you've got in the pantry, any kind of mushroom, dried or fresh, you know, anything that is pearl onion-esque, as long as you have garlic, right? All right, so while I've got my mushrooms, shallots, garlic, and bacon going, I think it's time for a little red wine. So if you would like to join me in some red wine, if you don't have it already, I would say go for it. We're going to be cooking with this red wine too. So this guy is a Chinon. So we went from closest to the Atlantic in terms of the Loire River and the Loire Valley wine appellations. And then we moved into the center. So Chinon is an actual appellation where they make a good bit of wine. They make a lot of red, mostly red. They also make some rosé and some white. And we're going to talk about the reds today. The red is made from a grape called Cabernet Franc. So I love this grape, and you don't see it as often as you see Pinot Noir or Merlot or Cabernet Sauvignon. In this Chinon appellation, you can actually add up to 10% of Cabernet Sauvignon to the Cabernet Franc, but not all the producers do that. So this particular grape varietal, so if you've got a little in your glass and put your nose in, I mean, it's got a signature. It always screams out of the glass and tells you what it is. It's got a little bit of like a green pepper, spicy green peppercorn kind of spicy note on it. And it is an amazing spice to add to a blend. Cabernet Franc is like a Terminator wine when it comes to pairing with dishes that have green notes and vegetables. So I love to always have some around, especially in the form of Chinon, which is a wine that can age for a very long time, which is really fun. Because it's bright, it's refreshing. As Mark and Dustin said earlier, it has really nice fruit, but it also has these green notes, which makes it a really great wine when you have herbs and those kinds of flavors, aromas in the dish. So I think the next thing that happens is I'm gonna add my red wine to the sauce and let it reduce. So as I might have mentioned, I mean, maybe Maria and Ken, I should bring some of this wine to your house. I have a lot of red wine from, you know, sort of half consumed bottles or bottles where I've had one glass, because, you know, I just love to taste things. So this is kind of a mix of a lot of different wines and a good bit of Chinon. So we've got a little bit of everything in there. We got, of course, we have to have French bread because we're having French wine, and we're gonna fry up the bread. And I have simmering water, which means the moment of truth is about to happen. I'm gonna have to poach that egg. Here we go.
Okay, and then you're gonna very gently lower your egg into the water and like let it go.
Ooh.
Now turn your heat down to low and time it for exactly 3.5 minutes. So excited. I've never had this before, Belinda, ever. I don't even know how it's served or plated. Like, what's the...
So you can put the toast on the bottom of a plate and then spoon the eggs and then spoon on the sauce on top. You can also do the eggs with the sauce and keep the toasted brioche on the side like little soldiers, right? How you would dip into an egg. So a couple other facts about Chinon, which I think is really fun. There are a lot of really venerable producers, multi-generational. I mean, both the Muscadet, Sèvre, Maine, and the Chinon are appellations that were created in France in the 1930s. Looks pretty good. I feel like we're in good shape there. That's my finished dish. I think it's pretty cute. Let's see if I can get the right angle for the yolk break. Ready? Boop, boop, boop. Hooray! Okay, so I had that bite. There's a little lingering flavor there. I'm going to try it with the Chinon. Yeah, that is like beyond a perfect pairing. So good. And I think that there is a little trick that the French know very well, and it's called liaison. So if you're ever worried that a dish is going to pair beautifully with the wine that you plan to serve with it, pour a little wine in, right? Because then all of your guests are going to have that dish and they're going to have a glass of the wine and they're going to think, wow, you perfectly paired this because it's echoing flavors, right? I get the same notes in the wine as I do in the dish. How did you do that? And then you don't have to tell them that you use that old French trick called liaison where you added a little bit of the wine that you're having and serving with the dish, and it's all together and so nice. Thank you. That is a great trick. All right, so I'm going back to the Muscadet now because I'm always really curious about wine pairing, and we have a rule. I've actually written the wine notes for several cookbooks and many magazines, and we always tell everyone, try what you think is going to work, and oftentimes you're completely wrong, but also try something that you think will be a terrible match because you might find something really unique and interesting. So a red wine sauce with mushrooms and bacon and shallots and garlic with a white wine. Doesn't that sound like super crazy? But this Muscadet has a little bit of texture. It is aged, extended on the lees, and so it could be fun. And it's a little spritzy. So I think that can be like a nice cleanser for some of the richness, some of the gorgeous wonderfulness that is the bacon fat. I think this acts a little like champagne does with some of the richer dishes and flavors. So it could definitely be kind of an interesting thing to go along. So, you know, I think that the moral of the story is it's really fun to visit with all of you and spend a little time not locked up in my studio by myself. So thank all of you for being here. And I hope that everybody learned, you know, something new about Loire Valley wines. And if you don't already enjoy them, maybe you're inspired to taste. So cheers, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us today. You are all so great, and everyone deserves a little wine every day, especially these days, and a little bacon or mushrooms with So bon appetit to you all, and have a great rest of the week.